All right. So what's disturbing to me about all this? I mean, the whole situation is messed up, but the way, like, apparently Phillips was grooming and molesting underage ring boys. So
Yes.
when you talk about being underage, why are they letting these young children into this work environment to be with these grown adults?
Yeah.
Like, and being like, I guess maybe traveling, or if they're just town to town. I'm not really sure how that goes, but when they say underage, what are they, like 15, 16 years old?
So that's kind of an interesting question because Murray Hodgson was a man who denied sexual advances from another man, right?
Okay.
And there were other wrestlers who also denied advances. But now when we move over to another segment of this breakdown, it's the Ring Boy scandal, right?
Yeah.
That has to do with Mel Phillips, former ring announcer. And for those of us that are old school fans from the mid 80s to early 90s, Mel Phillips was like the B announcer, right? He would be the ring announcer on the house shows or a wrestling challenge backup announcer. Very famously got beat up by Terry Funk in an angle in about 1986 where Terry Funk would be taking off his stuff in the ring and he put Terry Funk's hat on. So then Terry
So
Funk
did
pulled
Terry
up.
shoot on him, or
No,
was it
it was part of an angle,
his
but it
angle?
was like
Okay.
to establish Terry Funk was, he was crazy. He would beat
Yeah.
you up for anything. So
True.
that's Mel Phillips. Okay. What they would do was, and this is pulled from one of the more famous stories. So Tom Cole was one of the ring boys. Okay. Tom Cole would then speak out during this scandal against Mel Phillips and the WWF to say this is what went on behind the scenes in the process with Mel Phillips and the WWF of how they would get these boys. Okay. They were not just 15 or 16. They could be younger.
Dear God.
Yes. And what they would do is they would go from town to town and they would basically, and this is, I'm pulling from an interview with Tom Cole, was they would basically go into underprivileged areas and they would pull kids that came from basically homes with families of, children of alcoholics, broken homes, one parent households, and kids that had issues. And they would take them on the road with them. They would take them on planes. They would take them on bus trips. They would take them from town to town and say, would you like to set up the ring for the WWF at this house show? And then we'll go to, we'll go from Allentown to Scranton, from Scranton to, New Hope, from New Hope to Philly. And they would take them everywhere.
Yeah, but how does one know that they are from an underprivileged house, that they only have one parent?
Well, this is what Tom Cole is telling in the interview.
But how do you know? How is that?
They go to the inner city of the
Okay, you go to the inner city. What do you knock on somebody's door and say, "Hey, do you have a 12-year-old? Hey, are you married? Oh, are you single? Oh, okay, you're a one parent household. Okay, are you poor? Do you want me to take your kid on the road?"
Let me find the quote. Let me find this quote.
How do they know that these children are underprivileged? I understand you going, like, when I hear this story, I imagine them pulling up in a car and going to like a basketball court and seeing all these little kids play basketball and approaching the child and saying, "Hey, do you know who Bret Hart is? Do you want to meet Bret Hart? I can get you a job there."
Yeah, that's basically what they did.
Yeah, let's go talk to your mom and dad. Oh, you only have a mom there? Oh, okay. Well, let's go talk to your mom then.
Yeah.
And then them going to the parents and promising them the world if we can basically take your child from you. Like, that's the way I envision it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But again, like, that takes a lot of effort, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah. Let me read you the quote. This is a quote from Tom Cole in an interview with Wrestling Perspective back in the late 90s, 1999. Mel had a black book with names of kids from all over the country that he would call up if he would be in a specific town, and he would ask these kids if they would want to go to shows. You'd meet kids from every state. I'd go from New York to Philly, and he'd have young kids waiting for him. Boys at the shows, and he'd get 5, 6, and 7 kids. They'd go to Boston, and it would be the same thing, and maybe 1 or 2 of those kids would come with us, and they'd drive with us. It was the same motif if he had the same motif he had with me. He'd call parents. They were always kids from broken homes. Once in a blue moon, you'd hear like a kid who came from a so-called stable environment. Most of it was kids from a broken home with no father, just a mother, drunk mother, alcoholic, drug addict, whatever. That's pretty much the type of kid that Mel was geared toward.
Man,
so he's a predator. I mean, obviously, he's a predator.
Yeah, that's heavy stuff. I mean, I just, in a similar fashion, I just watched that Nick documentary.
Oh yeah, I want to see that.
I forget what it's called, but those people were on set with these kids, so it was easy. Easier to be a predator because they were in charge of the children. Here they're scouting. They're going to these cities and scouting young boys. That's crazy to me.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God. Yeah. And the parents would let them go on the road.
Yeah.
As a 13, 14, 15-year-old kid. Like, oh my God. Never. I would never, ever let my children. I can't wrap my head around this logic. I'm sorry.
And I grew up, thinking the ring crew was the referees and some of the stage hands, and guys that were just at the arena, for the show.
Well, it usually was.
Right. And here it is. He's got this little van full of kids that are going, oh, wow, I get to go to a wrestling show. And I'm sitting there going, wow, where do I find this van?
I guess they're promised all this stuff. And, little kids loving wrestling, being fans, they would jump at the chance. But being in the business, I know our ring crew was the same guys. We never had underage kids in the building. And if the guys came for a tryout, maybe they would help out. But these were grown men. They were always like 18 and over that, will come for tryouts. I've never seen a child, be ring crew. Not in ECW. Like, we never had that. So to me, this is blowing my mind. But again, you hit the nail on the head. That's what predators do. But to keep a blind eye to it, that's disgusting.
Yeah. And Mel Phillips also, in the revelations of this whole thing, was revealed to have a foot fetish, and he would prey on these kids, and this was a thing for many, many years. So Mel Phillips immediately fired, gone during the Ring Boy scandal, gone. So was Patterson and Garvin, but the Mel Phillips one was the longest standing. He never returned to wrestling. Gone. Just
good. He deserves to be gone.
But now with Patterson,
know this was going on.
Well, you'd have to think they saw the boys. And I've heard of wrestlers that have said they saw boys around, but they just didn't know to the extent of what or this despicable actions that were happening. But again, if you're a kid and you're offered, especially during that, and this is another interesting little nugget to go along with it. This is 1992. Okay. This is the beginning of the drop of the WWF. So up to 92, they are printing money, right? They are just, everything they touch is turning to gold. And in 90, it starts to go down a little bit. That's when the Ultimate Warrior becomes a champ, and people are starting to turn away. And then in 91, that's when they start hearing, the Hulkster's starting to finally get booed. Maybe they're starting to turn their back on this thing we've been doing all these years. And by 92, that's where the fall off happens, and this hits. So they probably thought the world was crashing down around them. But with Patterson, so they get rid of Patterson, but they bring him back eventually. He's a quick fire, but he's also a quick return. But with Murray Hodgson, I have a clip that we can play where there's confrontation between Vince and Hodgson on the Donahue show. This is one of the greatest pieces of wrestling outside of wrestling television. In a talk show setting, this is one of the best hours in the history of outside of wrestling TV. All right, so this is, you see Vince McMahon sitting to the right.
Yeah.
And this is Murray Hodgson here to the left.
Does sexual harassment exists in your workplace?
I believe that there's a possibility of sexual harassment existing everywhere.
And I asked directly if it was in the World Wrestling Federation.
My organization. I don't want it.
I'd like to reiterate the question. Do you believe there is sexual harassment amongst the wrestlers or employees of the World Wrestling Federation today?
There is a possibility of that. That's why I have these independent investigators to come in.
And who are these independent investigators?
Fairfax Group Limited. And I would like, to hear what you have to say, and everyone has to say. I want to get to the bottom of it.
Would you therefore believe that because of all these allegations coming forward and more corroborating evidence proving that there's no doubt sexual harassment is running rampant in the World Wrestling Federation, that you are definitely going to come public and do something about it?
Why wouldn't I? If in fact that is the case, why wouldn't I do something about it? Why would I risk what we have?
Because you haven't done anything about it until it became public, because you thought it was underwater.
Because I had no knowledge of it.
I made knowledge of it to you when I was fired, and you just blew it off and let me go. I retained a lawyer.
You were not very good. You were not a very good announcer. You could not. That's the only reason why you were fired. You could not make the transition from radio to television. That is the only reason why you were fired.
I would like to remind you, sir, that I have a 2-year contract. 2 years.
You also have a clause in your contract that states, and as you know, you were hired on a trial basis.
I was not hired on a trial basis.
You do not have a contract?
Mr. McMahon, I have a 2-year deal with your
contract,
firm.
you will note in a clause that states very clearly, and I have it outlined for all to see here today, that you can be fired almost at whim if in fact you're not doing a good job. You did a horrible job. That's the only reason why you were fired. That's it.
Maybe I should point out, first and foremost, that might be your inability to pick good talent.
It could be.
You had a national talent search, Vince McMahon.
Could be.
You advertised in Billboard magazine and across many different media sources searching for one man that could be the new face and voice of the World Wrestling Federation. You flew me in back and forth 4 and 5 different times from Detroit, and you chose over the course of 1 year of negotiations that I would be the man for that job. I didn't sleep with your vice president. 2 weeks later, I'm fired. I also want to point out one very important fact. From your office came a letter to my landlord to verify my employment. From that letter, I must bring this point up. It says Murray Hodson has a very secure job with Titan Sports and is a positive and productive employee. From your office. Just because I don't sleep with your vice president, that qualifies to blow me out of a 2-year deal? I don't buy it.
Wow. Wow. Holy moly, I've never seen that in my life.
Is that not unbelievable?
That is unbelievable. I am shocked that Vince agreed to go on the show. Did he know that this was going to happen?
He knew who was going to be there.
Wow. And what was Vince's answer to that? Oh, now, you know what? Just
you want to let it go?
No.
Oh,
Send me that. I want to sit down and watch that off air.
I believe he doubles down and just repeats what he said. I think he just doubles down.
Wow. Oh my gosh, that is mind-blowing. I need to. Can you send me the link to that?
I will. I'll send you the whole hour if you want. I mean, it's a great hour.
The whole show. I want to see. I've never seen it before.
Yeah. So that
amazing.
But that goes to show you that the cover-ups went that far that a guy who left his place of business in Detroit, moved from Detroit to Connecticut. You know, that's what they do with those announcers.
Yep.
Denied in advance from, it was alleged to be Pat Patterson, was fired. And there was his 2-year contract ripped up. Oh, there's a clause, you're gone. But he also did fire Pat Patterson. I think that's what he says next. He said, I did fire the executive. I think that's what he does say next. But it's just
he's claiming he was fired because he sucks. He sucks at his job.
Yes.
So
then why did you fire Pat Patterson?
You know, it's strange. He spoke eloquently. That man has a wonderful voice. I can't imagine him being a sucky ring announcer. I mean, I probably heard him if I watched old clips, but he sounds wonderful to me.
He did like the event centers, you know, like the coming to, you know, the Madison Square Garden, you know, Hulk Hogan and Macho Man.
Yep. Wow, I want to definitely see that. And to go on national television and be like, oh, is there? I don't know. I'll get to the bottom of it. Come on.
Yeah, no, did not come off good. See, that's where, and he was by himself. He didn't have any legal representation sitting next to him. He was on his own, and he would do that. He'd go on Larry King by himself. You know, he would go in other media. He'd go on Howard Stern and take questions. Like, he had the ability to take those one-on-one situations. He was outnumbered like 15-1 on that show, and that's what's incredible.
My mind's blown on that because I've never. I didn't become a fan till like the early 90s. So all this stuff earlier, I didn't know anything about. You know what I mean? And I wasn't a hardcore fan that I would know the insider info. So to see this, it blows my mind. And it's amazing because you don't see too many people stand up to Vince McMahon. And this guy wasn't backing down. And that's very, very, very attractive in a person. I like that. So good on him.